only child, but I found an old message from my brother on a flip phone. My parents' reaction is terrifying. What is the weight of a memory that does not exist? For 28 years, my life was a straight and predictable line. My name is Elias, and according to all official records, birth certificates, and family stories, I am an only child. I grew up in a perfect suburban house with parents who dedicated every second of their existence to my well-being. My mother, a woman with a soft voice and always watchful eyes, and my father, a businessman who preferred silence over confrontation. Being an only child in my family was not just a biological condition, it was a sacred identity. "You are our only miracle," my mother would say every time she tucked me in as a child. But there was always something strange, a kind of static in the back of my mind. Sometimes, on the edge of sleep, I would hear a laugh that was not mine, or I would feel a strange urge to put a second glass of water on the nightstand. My parents called it an imaginary friend phase. They told me my mind was too active and that, since I had no siblings, my brain invented company. Last Tuesday, that 28-year illusion shattered into pieces. My parents decided to sell my childhood home, to move to a retirement community on the coast. They asked me to help them clear out the attic, a place that had always caused me irrational terror when I was little. The attic was dark, full of old wooden beams, and dust so thick it seemed to have its own weight. As I was moving some heavy boxes of old school books, my right foot sank into a floorboard that gave way with a dry creak. Under the board, wrapped in a black cloth that smelled of mold and forgotten time, I found a small wooden box with a combination lock. For some reason, my fingers moved on their own. I did not have to think about the code. I dialed 12-10-04, the date of my 6th birthday. The lock opened with a metallic snap that echoed throughout the empty attic. Inside the box, there were no jewels or money. There was a Polaroid photograph and an old mobile phone, a sliding keyboard model that stopped being manufactured decades ago. The proof of existence. I took the photograph with trembling hands. The image was yellowed and damaged by moisture, but what I saw left me breathless. We were two little boys. We were sitting on the swing in the back garden, the same swing my father took down when I turned 7, saying I was too big for it. I was the boy on the left, but next to me was another boy, maybe a year or two older than me. We had the same nose, the same dark and rebellious hair, and we wore identical t-shirts. But someone had used a sharp object to scratch off the other boy's face, leaving only a white, fibrous void where his smile should be. I felt a sudden nausea. I went down to the kitchen, avoiding my parents, who were busy in the garden. I looked for a compatible cable in my toolkit, and after 30 minutes of tension, the old phone emitted a vibrating hum. The screen lit up with a sickly blue glow, showing the logo of a phone company that went bankrupt years ago. I went straight to the drafts folder. There was only one message. It had no recipient, as if whoever wrote it had no time to dial a number before being interrupted. The message was dated October 12th, 2004. The text said the following: "Elias, if you are reading this, it is because they won. I am not a ghost, and I am not your imagination. My name is Gabriel, and I am your older brother. Please, do not take the red pills that Mom gives you before bed. They are erasing our history. Look for me in the basement, under the laundry room. I love you, little brother." The phone suddenly shut down, the battery exhausted by the effort of reviving after 2 decades. I sat in the dim light of my room, feeling the world I knew fade away. Gabriel, the name echoed in my head like a bell. He was not an imaginary friend. He was a boy of flesh and blood who had shared my room, my toys, and my blood. How is it possible that my parents, the people I trusted most, had erased a son from the face of the earth? That night, the silence of the house did not feel comforting. It felt suffocating. I felt as though the very walls that had seen me grow up were watching me with the judgment of someone guarding an unspeakable secret. I waited until the clock struck 2 in the morning. I made sure the 2 red pills, the ones my father had given me with such insistence, were well hidden in the handkerchief inside my pocket. My mind felt strangely clear, as if a fog that had accompanied me my entire life was finally dissipating. I went down the stairs barefoot so as not to make a sound. Every creak of the wood sounded like a gunshot in the darkness. When I reached the laundry room, the smell of detergent and fabric softener felt nauseating. I turned on my phone's flashlight, careful to cover the light with my fingers so the glow wouldn't leak under the door. According to the message on the old cell phone, the secret was here. I moved the washer and the dryer. They were heavy, modern machines, but the floor beneath them did not match. While the rest of the room had clean white tiles, under the washer there was a gray rubber mat that seemed to be glued to the floor. With a kitchen knife I had taken from upstairs, I began to tear at the rubber. Beneath it was not solid concrete. There was a wooden trapdoor, so perfectly fitted into the floor that, had it not been for the message, I would never have found it. The trapdoor had no handle, only a small hole to insert something thin. I used the key from the padlock I found in the attic, and with a sharp turn, I heard a hydraulic mechanism activate. The wood gave way with a sigh of cold, stale air. It wasn't the smell of dampness from an ordinary basement. It was a metallic, chemical smell, like that of an abandoned hospital. I descended a metal ladder that sank into the darkness. Upon reaching the bottom, I felt for a switch on the wall. When the lights flickered and finally stayed on, what I saw made me fall to my knees. This was not a storage basement. It was a room perfectly equipped, but designed for confinement. There was a small bed, a table bolted to the floor, and a reinforced glass wall that divided the room into 2 sections. In the back section, there were shelves full of medical files. I ran toward them, ignoring the trembling of my hands. Every file had a name. Gabriel. There were photos of him at different stages. In one he was 5 years old, in another 8. In the last one he must have been about 12. His face, the same one that had been scratched out in the Polaroid, was identical to mine, but his eyes held a sadness that broke my soul. I began to read the log from 2004. The document said, "Subject Gabriel shows progressive resistance to the Lethe Protocol. His ability to remember Elias is interfering with the stability of the minor subject. Definitive physical separation is recommended. The caregivers assigned as biological parents must proceed to the total erasure phase in Elias through the daily administration of synaptic suppressants." I felt as though I had been punched in the stomach. My parents were not my parents. They were assigned caregivers. My entire childhood had been an experiment paid for by someone to see if one human being could be erased from the memory of another. But the worst part was at the bottom of the page. A handwritten note by my own mother said, "Gabriel tried to hide a phone today. We have punished him without food for 48 hours. Tomorrow the men from the Institute will come to take him away. Elias no longer asks about him. The protocol is working." Suddenly, a noise from above froze my blood. The sound of the washing machine being dragged back into its original position. The trapdoor slammed shut over my head. The basement light cut out, leaving me in absolute darkness. "Son," my father's voice echoed through a small speaker hidden in the ceiling. "We asked you not to go down there. We gave you a perfect life. A life without the weight of the anomaly that was your brother. Gabriel was not like you. He could see the threads. He could see those who watch us. We couldn't let him infect you with his truth. Where is he?" I screamed, pounding on the reinforced glass with my fists. "Tell me where you took my brother. Gabriel is where all the forgotten end up." My mother's voice replied, now cold and devoid of any maternal warmth. He is part of the system now. And you, Elias, are going to have to start over. Tonight's dose will be stronger. Tomorrow you will wake up, and this house will be new to you. There will be no attic, no basement, and no imaginary brothers. There will only be us, your family, the only one you need. I heard a soft, hissing sound. A gas smelling of gardenias began to filter through the ventilation grates. My head began to spin. I knew that if I stayed there, Gabriel would die a second death in my memory, and this time it would be forever. I searched in the darkness, feeling the glass wall until I found a small crack that time had formed. I used the padlock key, jamming it into the fissure and prying with all the strength of my desperation. The glass shattered with a deafening sound. I managed to scramble through to the other side of the partition where the files were kept. I found a small emergency exit, a ventilation duct that seemed to lead toward the back garden. I crawled through the narrow tunnel, feeling my lungs burn from the gas. Just before losing consciousness from the lack of oxygen, I felt the cool night air on my face. I emerged on the surface, in the middle of my mother's rose bushes, and I ran into the woods surrounding the property. I didn't stop running until I reached the main highway. As I walked under the moonlight, I found something in my jacket pocket I didn't know I had. It was a small scrap of paper I had torn from Gabriel's file without realizing it. It had an address written on the back, Oblivion Street, number 303, Delta Facility. Now I am in a roadside motel. I have used my last bit of money to buy an old computer and upload this post. My parents, or whoever those people are looking for me. I know they have resources. I know they can erase my digital footprint at any moment. If you stop reading updates from me, it means they caught me and the Lethe Protocol finally won. But if you are still there, if you are an only child and you ever felt like someone was walking beside you in the hallway, please look in your basement. The truth cannot be erased with pills. It can only be hidden under the concrete. Tomorrow I am going to Delta Facility. I am going for Gabriel, because I am no longer afraid to remember. I reached the Delta Facility just as the sun began to stain the sky a sickly orange. It was not an imposing government building, but a complex of windowless industrial warehouses surrounded by a chain-link fence that seemed to vibrate with an invisible electric current. The number 303 was barely visible on a rusted metal plate. As I watched from the underbrush, I realized there were no armed guards at the entrance, only security cameras that rotated with an inhuman precision, tracking the movement of anything that stirred. My head was still throbbing from the gas I inhaled in the basement, but adrenaline was the only thing keeping me upright. I pulled out the scrap of paper from Gabriel's file. On the back, in addition to the address, there was a small 6-digit code, 914206. I approached the side door, avoiding the angle of the cameras by pure instinct, and punched the numbers into the digital keypad. The door emitted a dull click and swung open. The interior smelled of ozone and industrial disinfectant. There were no carpeted hallways or offices. It was a honeycomb of glass cells, similar to the one I found under my laundry room. But what I saw inside them made me want to tear my eyes out. There were dozens of young people, men and women my age, sitting in absolute silence. Some stared at the wall, others moved their lips without making a sound. They all had one thing in common. They wore the same white clothes and had a circular mark on their temple, a kind of burn scar that glowed faintly under the fluorescent lights. I walked down the central aisle, trying not to scream in horror. In each cell, there was a plate with a name and a date of entry. I saw names that felt familiar, names of elementary school classmates who, according to my parents, had moved away overnight. They were the forgotten. Every single one of them had been a brother, a sister, or a best friend to someone who is now out there, living a perfect life, believing they had always been alone. Finally, at the end of the hallway, in the zone marked as the stabilization level, I saw him. He was facing away, sitting on a metal chair, staring at a screen that projected images of our childhood at a dizzying speed. Photos of us eating ice cream, photos of our first bicycle, photos that I did not remember, because the Lethe Protocol had blocked them in my brain. "Gabriel," I whispered, tapping gently on the glass. He did not move. His body looked like an empty shell. I approached the control console and began pressing buttons at random until the glass door slid open. I went in and put my hand on his shoulder. His skin was cold, as if life itself had been drained from him. When he finally turned his head to look at me, I did not see the recognition I expected. His eyes were gray, dull, as if he were looking right through me. "Elias," he said in a monotonous voice, devoid of any emotion. "You are late. The 20-year cycle is about to close. There is nothing of Gabriel left here. Only data. Only residual memory. Don't say that," I pleaded, feeling tears stream down my cheeks. "I found the phone. I found your message. I remember the swing, Gabriel. I remember you taking care of me when I was afraid of the dark. You have to come with me." Gabriel pointed to the mark on his temple. "The Institute does not erase the memories of those of us here, Elias. They use us as backup processors. You can forget, because we remember for you. If I leave, if I die, your mind will collapse. Your entire identity is anchored to my pain. That is why they keep us here. We are the hard drive of your happiness."
I bet you can't hit the follow button and the heart before the video ends in 3, 2, 1.